So Alan, when this was the family farm, did the property next door where you built your house, was that part of the farm, and the property where the bassoon factory is, that was all part of the
That was all part of the farm,
family?
right.
Okay.
It was just converted into those specific uses.
Yeah, I think it was like 120 acres, maybe.
Yeah, a little smaller than that, 105 or 110, yeah.
Yeah.
So what year was this house constructed? Did your father build this or
Well,
your
my
grandparents?
father built this house because he fell in love with a house in Europe. He studied in Paris in 1923, and this was a copy of either a Dutch farmhouse or a French farmhouse. And we've had family arguments over what it's a copy of forever. And nevertheless, it was what he wanted, and so he designed the house, and South Whitley builder built it. Can't remember the name. Lee, was it George Lee?
I'm not Darley or not Carey.
Oh, this was before they were in business.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll have
This was built in 1926, and I reviewed the cost of building it, and he built it for $6,000.
Pretty good. Okay, so going back to the family history, you've won this chemistry contest and you head off for Purdue.
Right,
And what did you study there?
chemical engineering, and I was never a very good student. It was a wonder that I got out of Purdue, but later on, Purdue gave me their Outstanding Alumni Award in 1992, and again in '96, and then 2 years after that, I received 2 more awards from them, and Purdue's been very good to me.
And what kind of experiment did you do to win the state competition when you were in high school?
Well, there were no experiments, but there was a big questionnaire that you had to fill out, and I guess I was the winning filler out of that.
And who was your chemistry teacher in high school?
Ford Fleck.
Ford Fleck, okay.
Okay, so you graduate from Purdue. Is that when you went into the military?
Yes, I studied the ROTC program, and was commissioned in 1955, and served a summer school hitch at Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland, and then I took a 30-day leave and I went right back in the Army, and in the early 1956 I was shipped to Germany as a weapons officer in the Ordnance Corps, and my specialty was all types of weapons of that time. At this point, they're almost all obsolete, but at the time they were not.
So you were in the ROTC at Purdue,
Yeah.
and you joined after your freshman year, or how did you get into the ROTC at Purdue?
I joined my freshman year, and then getting a commission was part of the graduation requirement.
Okay.
And you actually didn't get your diploma until after you got your commission.
Okay. And what were your commitments to ROTC while you were at Purdue? Did you have formation every Saturday, or?
As I recall, we met more than once a week.
Mm-hmm.
I don't recall how much anymore.
Okay. And then in the summer, did you have a commitment?
Yes, for the whole summer. The course was about 4.5 or 5 years, and then after graduation, when I went in on active service with a 2-year commitment, and a 4-year reserve commitment. But I never actually did anything in the reserve commitment. They didn't ask me to show up for anything, so I was on call, but I never did anything.
Okay, and you, after graduation, were you a first lieutenant?
Yes.
And then?
Well, no, I was a second lieutenant, and then I was promoted to first lieutenant afterward.
And that was your highest rank?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so when you were in Germany, is that when you went to visit your father's friend in Paris?
Yes, my dad had a good friend by the name of Louis Whirley from Paris. Well, actually, originally, Louis was from Fort Wayne. And at the end of World War I, Louis took his discharge in France from the Army. And he and a French buddy of his bought a small hotel up near Montparnasse, Gare Montparnasse in Paris. And then at the start of World War II, Louis began driving an ambulance for the French. And the Germans captured him. And the United States was not in the war at that time. And the Germans said because he was an American that if he would go back to the United States, they'd let him go. So he went back, came back here and came back to Fort Wayne. And I met him, it must have been 1942 or 3. And of course he was a lifelong friend of my father's. So when I got to Europe and he found out about it, I got a letter inviting me to use his hotel free of charge anytime that I was in Paris. So I went to Paris frequently. And Louis not only provided me a free room in the hotel, he bought me tickets to the Lido and to the Folies Bergère and anything else that was playing in France. And the only condition that he attached to it was that he wanted me to go with him to the TNT Club. Well, I was 22 and he was 60, and it took me a while to get enthusiastic about going out with this old guy. And but finally, I agreed to go to the TNT Club. And we went, and it was in a very elegant hotel, which was at the end of the Champs-Élysées, the French main drag. And it had big arches by the sidewalk. And I've seen it in Hollywood movies a dozen times. But anyway, we went in there, and there were 3 guests the day that I was there. And the rules of the club were that each of the guests had to tell a joke. And the group of about 40 men responded to this joke. And the first guest was a minister, and he told a very clean joke. And the result of that was total silence on the part of the men at all of the tables. And so that had a penalty. If your guest told a bad joke, you were liable for a round of cognac to all 40 guests, all 40 members in the group. And so this minister's guest was liable for 40 cognacs. Well, the second guy in this thing was not a minister, but he told a very clean joke also. And he got the same treatment that the ministers did. So I was determined that I was not going to stick Louis with 40 cognacs. And I told the filthiest joke that I knew, which by today's standards was pretty mild, but it wasn't mild by the standards of the day. And I incorporated Louis into the storyline of the joke. And I got 3 bars, which was the symbol of acceptance. And after the meal, the members came around to our table to congratulate me on the success of the joke. And it was at that point that I found out who I was having dinner with. It was the Consulate General de France, the heads of the Europeans of TWA, Pan American, U.S. Steel, all of the major corporations that had headquarters in Paris. And if I had realized who I was telling the joke to, I wouldn't have had the nerve to go ahead and tell it. But nevertheless, it was successful, and it got me an invitation to a party in one of the chateaus of Paris in the following week that I was there.